The Scole Experiments began not with flashing lights or ghostly voices, but with a quiet belief shared by a handful of ordinary people who wondered whether death was truly the end. In the small village of Scole in Norfolk, England, during the early 1990s, Robin and Sandra Foy welcomed friends Alan and Diana Bennett into the cellar beneath their old farmhouse. It was an ordinary room by daylight, but when darkness fell, they believed it became a bridge between two worlds. Night after night, the group gathered in complete silence. The lights were extinguished until the cellar was swallowed by total darkness. They believed that darkness protected a fragile energy their unseen communicators called essential for physical manifestations. Holding hands around a simple table, they waited.
Let's go inside.
Be careful on the stairs.
It's very dark down here. I'm switching off the light.
Look, it's here.
The newspaper. It just appeared.
What does it say?
Careful. Don't touch it yet.
At first, there was only silence. Then came the tapping. A single knock echoed somewhere in the room. Another answered from a different corner. Soon the knocks formed patterns, almost like someone learning to speak through sound alone. As the months turned into years, the group claimed the phenomena became increasingly dramatic. Tiny points of brilliant white light suddenly appeared in the darkness. Witnesses described them as floating spheres no larger than marbles. They darted around the cellar with astonishing speed, stopping inches from people's faces before racing across the room. According to those present, the light seemed intelligent. They responded to spoken requests, hovered over objects, circled participants, and occasionally appeared to pass directly into someone's body before disappearing. The observers watched in amazement as impossible things seemed to happen around them. A trumpet resting on the floor suddenly rose into the darkness and played music without visible hands touching it. Gentle fingers brushed against startled guests. Warm breath was felt beside someone's ear, despite nobody standing nearby. The room's temperature dropped sharply, leaving everyone shivering before returning to normal moments later. Voices then emerged, not voices from the people sitting around the table, but deep, clear voices speaking from different locations within the darkness. Some identified themselves as deceased individuals. Others claimed to be members of what they called a spirit team, guiding the experiments from another dimension. Unlike traditional Victorian seances that often spoke of ectoplasm flowing from mediums, the communicators claimed they had discovered an entirely different method. They described combining spiritual energy, human energy, and even natural earth energy, sometimes referring to ley lines beneath the farmhouse, to create the remarkable physical effects witnessed inside the cellar. Whether that explanation represented reality or imagination would become one of the experiment's greatest mysteries. As the sessions continued, stranger events were reported. Objects known as apports supposedly appeared from nowhere. Ancient coins materialized on the table. Fresh flowers appeared despite no one entering the room. On one occasion, participants claimed a newspaper dating back to the Second World War suddenly manifested, carrying the scent and aging expected of genuine decades-old paper. Perhaps even more astonishing were the photographs. Sealed rolls of photographic film were placed inside locked containers before the seances began. When the film was later developed, strange images reportedly appeared. Some resembled faces. Others contained symbols, landscapes, mysterious writings, or geometric patterns that participants claimed had never been exposed through any normal photographic process. To believers, these photographs represented direct communication from another realm. To skeptics, they raised difficult questions about handling procedures and experimental controls. Word of the extraordinary events slowly spread beyond the village. Researchers from the Society for Psychical Research, one of the world's oldest organizations dedicated to investigating paranormal claims, traveled to Scole to witness the experiments themselves. Among them were Montague Keene, Arthur Ellison, and David Fontana. Over numerous visits, they observed many of the reported phenomena under the conditions permitted by the group. Their findings were eventually published as the Scole Report in the Society's proceedings. The investigators stopped short of declaring that spirits had unquestionably been proven. However, they also stated they had found no evidence of deliberate fraud during the sessions they attended. Several of the experiences left them deeply impressed, particularly because they could not immediately explain what they had witnessed. Yet even within the Society for Psychical Research, not everyone agreed. The seances were always conducted in complete darkness. Independent recording equipment was often restricted. The mediums themselves controlled many of the experimental conditions. For critics, these limitations made meaningful scientific verification nearly impossible. Psychologist Richard Wiseman became one of the experiment's best-known skeptics. During one investigation, he supplied specially controlled photographic film designed to eliminate ordinary explanations. After reviewing the evidence, he remained unconvinced, arguing that the conditions prevented reliable conclusions and that extraordinary claims required far stronger evidence than the seances could provide. The debate only intensified. Believers pointed to hundreds of sessions, often cited as approximately 464, arguing that such consistency over nearly 5 years could not simply be dismissed. Skeptics countered that repetition alone could never replace rigorous controls. By 1998, the regular Scole sessions came to an end, but the mystery refused to disappear. Books were published. Researchers continued analyzing notes, photographs, and recordings. Years later, Grant and Jane Solomon began preserving the enormous archive created during the experiments. Thousands of pages, audio recordings, images, and historical documents were digitized and released for public study. Among the newer materials were claims that some of the communicating intelligences were not merely human spirits, but something entirely different, described as non-human intelligences with possible connections to the growing mystery surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena. To supporters, the Scole Experiments remain one of the strongest modern cases suggesting consciousness survives physical death, offering what they believe are remarkable examples of physical mediumship witnessed by respected investigators. To skeptics, they remain a cautionary tale about the dangers of drawing extraordinary conclusions from experiments conducted under conditions too weak to eliminate deception or error. More than 2 decades later, the cellar at Street Farmhouse has become part of paranormal history. Whether it was the site of genuine communication from another reality, misunderstood natural events, unconscious human influence, or an elaborate illusion remains unresolved. The darkness that filled that little room in Norfolk concealed more than the faces of those gathered around the table. It concealed an unanswered question that still divides believers and skeptics alike. When the lights went out in Scole, was someone or something really waiting in the dark?